Hi, and welcome to this section on designing learning experiences. This section will talk about the kind of model that I've been using um, for the past 20 years or so to design in-class learning experiences, but it also works with the online version as well. So, in order to follow and practice what I preach in relation to using mnemonics and memory aids, I'm borrowing this model from a very good friend of mine, John Townsend, who developed this in the early 90s. And he's a very interesting character. The two of us together constructed the Master Trainer Institute in Geneva. And his father was a pilot in the Second World War. And he had this idea of using a pilot experience as a means of using a mnemonic, creating a mnemonic. And these are based on people he knew and people he associated with at the time. So the mnemonic is B Gunnar Ede Graf B, and it's based on the name of an Icelandic pilot who joined the Royal Air Force helicopter B squadron um, during the Second World War. And each part of B Gunnar's name is a part of the learning experience, designing the learning experience. So it's quite interesting. Just in terms of looking at this tool I'm using is Prezi Video. And Prezi Video allows you to do quite a lot of interesting things. You can forward the slide. Um, Obviously, you bring it back if you like. But if you forward it, you can actually also make it kind of transparent. So you can see the person behind if you wish, or not, as the case may be. So the transparency probably allows you to merge in and out with the slide itself. So this is B Gunnar Edigraph B, how to structure a learning experience. And let's look at it in three phases. The three phases of the learning experience are the gap phase, the teaching phase, and the recap phase. So if you look at these three phase thing, it's um, it's based a lot on Gagne, that learning specialist of the 1960s, whose theories around how people learn and how to design learning experiences, um, they're still extant, and he's one of the most durable theorists on the subject. Ggne, well worth looking at. So he talked about three phases in a learning experience. So the gap phase, the teaching and learning phase, and the recap phase. So if you look at the first phase, which is the gap phase, and people don't really learn unless they want to or need to, which is something that we say quite often. And if you look at the any individual, they really won't bother learning unless they feel it's absolutely necessary for them. So this structure of 6 steps, some of them can be done concurrently. They can often be done by one action, the whole lot of them. So in actual fact, it's quite a fluid idea, but the basics behind it is to get somebody ready to learn, to get somebody to be prepared to learn and want to learn. So opening with a bang. Um, the idea behind opening with a bang is, well, I suppose you could call it get an attention getter. Um, the attention getter is, how would you call it? Something that wakes them up. And you can obviously wake up anybody with a noise, but I think some crafty ones are better. Something like an unusual statistic. Um, for example, how many CVs go in the bin? Something like that. If we're talking about careers and we're talking about the interview process and getting an interview and getting a job, how many CVs actually hit the bin without being read in any way? So the bang is to wake people up and bring them in. Cartoon could be a joke. Um, Best ones are ones which are actually linked to the program, obviously. The gap is helping a person, well, there are two things together here. One is the gap and the other is understand the gap. One is to demonstrate to the individual that there is a gap there, and a gap between where they are and where they will be when they get to the end of the program. And understanding the gap is analysing it, understanding the depth of it, admitting it, agreeing to it almost. So participating with, by asking, for example, by asking individuals, how much do you know about this stuff? What are the concerns that you have around this stuff? So it gets people to confess or to profess or to agree that they have a gap where they are. And you can see the psychology working here, getting the person ready to learn, I suppose, to be motivated to learn. The idea of need is adults learn if they want to, and that's the gap, but if they need to. The other thing about that need to is really, for example, what's in it for me? Often you see that acronym WIIFM, what's in it for me? Everybody will pay attention to things when they can see something in it for them. They see relevance. So individuals learn if there's relevance for them. And you have to see it from where they sit. You have to think about, how am I going to look at this issue, this problem, from the perspective of the learner, and how can I present it to them, show them information so that they will see the payoff for them if they stay on the program. The next part is about asking and answering questions. Really, people are, how comfortable are they where they are? How comfortable are they going forward with the learning? How committed are they? Are there things they don't understand? Would they like to ask? And last, before you leave this section, is the route map. Adults learn if they can see in front of them how you're going to answer all these questions. It's all right expressing the gap, showing them the gap, showing them the payoff, etc. But how are you going to close that gap? And one way of doing it is to show them a route map as to how this is going to pan out. So, having been finished phase one, you should have a learner who's actually ready to go and can't wait to get started. And the second phase is really the teaching and learning phase. And the structure of a second phase is really explaining the concept to the left brain, demonstrating the concept to the right brain, and allowing them to actually have an exercise where they can practice, because adults learn if they can practice, and guiding and correcting them as they go along. So explaining to the left brain and demonstrating to the right brain. If you see the brain, you can see people's brains, they seem to deposit different kinds of information and different kinds of activities in different parts of the brain. But they like the logic of the explanation, but they also love the demonstration where they can actually see and get to wrap their heads around maybe them doing it. This doesn't have to come in this order. For example, it can come in an order of demonstrate it to the right brain while they're watching you, and then explaining it to the left brain when they've seen it in action. I'll give you an example of this. When I'm teaching managers how to praise and reprimand, what I will often do is I will often go stand up in front of them and ask them to watch me doing something. So I will demonstrate to them me executing a praise message to one of their staff. And then I explain what I've done, or what I tend to do is I explain Socratically what I've done. I say, what did you see there? And let's go through that. So it's like a demonstrate and an explanation. And then, of course, people learn if they can practice. So they get a chance to get into threes and practice praise messages on each other with an observer. And then everybody change places, and another person gets a chance to be the observer, and then the other two people play out the role play. And structuring a learning experience finishes up with recap, action plan, follow-up. So the recap stage, and it's really the recap and transfer stage. It's how do you make the learning move from here to there. So at the end of a session, it's always useful to recap the learning. Now that can happen in lots of ways. You can do it in a review, a test quiz or application, or some kind of maybe a replay of the role play in some ways. That's fairly straightforward. Recapping helps people. People can write in their journal exactly what they've learned, and then they make an action plan. Okay, how are you going to practice this? People, if they make action plans, they're more likely to actually do something. One good action plan is a buddy up system. A buddy up system whereby they actually pair off and they agree that over the next week they will meet to review the practice, how they transferred it. And the F is for follow up. So it's great if they know that you are going to follow it up. So you can follow up by email with learners. You can follow it up by the next time you get together. You revisit what you've actually learned. So they always know there's going to be a follow up. So introduce some kind of follow up for individuals, or you can automate emails that go out to learners, or pop something up on Canva or whatever learning management system is in use. And then the closure of the learning experience is the bang. So great bangs are ones which are seamlessly related to each other, the opening one and the closing one. So even by mentioning it, and that's how you make sure that your CV doesn't end up in the bin, is a good way of tiny little drawl kind of statement that reminds them that this was a crafted package, like a gift, wrapped up very carefully, topped and tailed by you, and it has that effect, psychological effect on individuals, and that's how you put together a learning experience. So let's just have a brief recap with this one. There are 3 phases to it. There's a gap phase, which is about preparing them to learn. There's a teaching and learning phase where you go through the explain and demonstrate, or demonstrate and explain, and let them practice and guide and correct them. And then the 3rd phase is the recap phase. Recap what you've learned and then plan as to how you're going to implement it when you get back to work, or when you get back to your studies, or however. That's how to design a learning experience.